Howdy, howdy, and welcome back to another Workshop Wednesday. This week's edition is a strategy session, and we're going to be talking about a topic that will become increasingly popular through 2022, and that is building a measurement strategy around all this data privacy stuff that's going on in the world. So we'll be talking about that today. Before we get too far into this, of course, welcome. If this is your first Workshop Wednesday, my name is Chris Mercer. Everybody calls me Mercer. You should as well. I'm the co-founder of measurementmarketing.io, and however you found us, maybe through some of the podcasts and talks that we give, through some of the platforms that we share a little of our content with, like CXL Institute, Measure Summit, or Digital Marketer, even Social Media Examiner. And of course, you might already be a member over at measurementmarketing.io. However you found us, we're happy that you're here. It's our job to help you learn all this fun, cool stuff when it comes to measurement, like Google Analytics, building reports with Data Studio and Tag Manager. And of course, it all comes down to the Measurement Marketing Academy, which is our flagship training program. We'll talk more about that a little bit toward the end of this particular workshop. But first, it's time to learn a little something about privacy. And of course, all of our trainings, we always focus on one thing. So one new idea, one new way of thinking about something, one new thing that might goes, okay, I think I can make it through this, especially when it comes to the world of data privacy. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Strategy session, building a measurement strategy around data privacy. Now, before I flip to the next slide, I wanted you to just look at this slide because this is kind of what goes on. Initially, you've got these reports that are coming through and you're using those just fine. And all of a sudden the reports go screwy. Things start not making sense the way they once did. The trends and the patterns change and it can be a little confusing. So you have to go back to the planning stage at a certain time, especially when it comes to thinking about data privacy. So that's kind of why we built the slide to make it look like it is. When your reports just start going weird and you're like, I don't know how to do reports anymore. What is this brand new world we find ourselves in? Sometimes it's just helpful to rethink how we do things. And so that's what this session is all about. Now, of course, we're going to go ahead and dive right in as we always do with the framework. Remember, Measurement Marketing Framework, 3 steps. You plan, you build, and then you launch and you actually start using your measurement. We're all marketing in the blind, and we're trying to get to a system that's reliably producing revenue and profits. How do we do that? First, we plan. Think about the questions we're trying to answer. Now, even in the world of data privacy, that does not matter. You still ask the same results and how style questions. Then we collect the information to get answers to our questions. This is where data privacy is going to come and bite you a little bit because maybe we can't collect every little bit of information that we need in order to answer the questions, but we will be able to collect some. So we'll talk more about that in just a few minutes. Once we have the answers to the questions that we can hopefully find to get some trends and patterns, then we think about the actions we're going to take based upon those answers. And that, of course, that's where the role plays come in. We think about what the dashboard's going to look like and all of that stuff. Once you've got your plan in place, then you go to actual build, where you make sure your platform, ideally something like Google Analytics, is recording the results that we're trying to measure for. We call ACE results. Then you measure for traffic. Make sure it identifies the who, what, and why of the traffic. And ideally, you're going to learn how to use these tools like Google Analytics, and you're going to do what we call a setup, which means that it's connected. There's a story that is now being told between which traffic is causing which results. So you actually know how things are working when it comes to your own measurement. Now, we all hopefully know at this point that you should be listening to the conversation that's happening between the users and the website. That's the idea. That's why the launch starts with listen, because we got to be able to understand the conversation that the users are having with the site. And of course, when it comes to world of data privacy, that's going to be a little more challenging, not impossible by a long shot. It's just that the trends and patterns are going to change. We're going to show you that ways to think about that in this particular session. So pay attention, especially if you're responsible for using a measurement system, not necessarily building it. And then, of course, you still forecast, but the forecast might change a little bit because you're going to have to account for some data privacy stuff that might influence you. And then, of course, you optimize. You still measure against what your forecasts were, and that's how you know where to optimize. That's the Measurement Marketing Framework. And of course, we're going to move in and talk about specifically how we deal with the world of data privacy. And I'm going to bring this graphic up because I think it's a good way to think about it. Remember, there are 3 big storms that we are in the middle of right now as marketers, and will be around for years to come. This is not going to go away anytime soon. This is just going to stick around. There are the laws, GDPR, California's got a law. US will certainly have a federal law eventually. There is tech. So tech is constantly changing, with Chrome kind of being the most recent of those changes, where it's going to be in 2023, getting rid of third-party cookies. Safari's already done it. We already know about iOS and Facebook and the tiff they got into. So tech is constantly changing, and it's going to make it harder and harder to actually measure stuff. It just will. Like, that's just going to be a natural thing. There are, of course, users themselves. have ad blockers and stuff like that. They're using Brave more often, browsers that aren't supposed to be trackable, like that sort of stuff is going to happen. So all three of these storms we're in the middle of, and all this data, which is here, all this data that we've been used to is starting to look a little different, right? It's starting to look quite a bit different, actually. It's starting to look more like this, where you have, all the juicy data we used to have access to. It's a little less. And then the next, couple months, it gets a little less, and it gets a little less, and it gets a little less. And this data is still there. So what I mean by that is all the actions that are happening, the behaviors that are happening on the sites, they're still happening. But because they're getting caught up in the storm, whether because it's illegal for you to measure it based upon where you live, or the tech won't allow you to measure it based upon what they're using, or the users themselves don't want you to measure it because they're asking for privacy, you're going to have more of this gray data, this data that's technically there. The behaviors are technically there, but you're not going to be able to measure it. You're not going to be able to record it. You're not going to be able to store it. You can't collect, store it, and it's going to be harder to make reports based on it. So this is what we want to talk about, is how do we as marketers come up with a strategy that just, you're not going to be able to get around this. This is not what this training's about, because you should not be focused on that. That's just a cat and mouse game, and it's going to end poorly for you if you keep trying to think about. It's not about how do I take this and get it so I can record more and more and more and more. It's not about that. It's about dealing with the inevitable, dealing with the trends and patterns. You're just going to be able to measure less than we could before. That's a normal thing. That's going to be a trend and a pattern that we have to get used to as marketers. And if we adjust our systems first and foremost to account for this, then it will get a lot easier. It's going to get substantially easier to do it. Now, I will briefly say from a strategy perspective, because remember, we're not talking about implementation things. I'm going to show you a couple of very sort of high-level technical things to make sure that you're aware of a strategist, that these things exist, and you will work with your implementation teams to make sure that they do get put into play. There are a couple things that do help a tiny bit with measuring data that is inadvertently being classified as private, meaning privacy is where somebody says, don't measure me, right? In that case, you should respect that, absolutely respect that. But there are some things where some of the tech is just harder to measure through, and you have to upgrade your measurement systems to handle what the new tech is. Like iOS, Safari, you can do cookie rewrites and stuff like that help measure a user journey consistently and a little bit more of a useful truth, right? That's coming through. That's some technical changes that happened. But if you upgrade your tech, for example, use something like GTM server side and run your own measurement server. And again, we're not going to go into the details of this. We have an entire course in the Academy on Google Tag Manager server side and what it is and how to set it up. But it's essentially running your own server. And so at that point, if you control the data, you can now rewrite the data. You can rewrite cookies. You can keep sessions together. You can curate your own data warehouse or your own data lake and eventually your own data warehouse to be able to pull as a data source. And that can help. That can help a lot with some of this. But remember, this costs money, and it might be out of roughly figure about $100 a month for a small business. So if that's something that's okay with you and your budget, then go for it. But it'll take resources. It'll take focus. It'll take money. So server side's not an answer for everybody. And so I wanted you to be aware of that as a thing, but it doesn't mean that, okay, we're saying go out and do server side setups. Like eventually, probably will you, as the company grows, as your resources grow? Sure, that's something to absolutely look at because you'll have better quality data. You won't have as much data. It's still not going to get it all back, but the quality of the data that you collect will be better, which will make the modeling better. That's the whole idea of this. But what I want to talk about here is, let's assume, okay, fine. I know that server side's a thing. I know that we can do it, but we're not going to do it for whatever reason, either time or the monetary resources aren't there, or maybe just the technical resources on your end, because it is a little more in depth than just regular tag manager. So I thought, let's talk about the trends and patterns and how to actually think through this, because there's a lot that we can do as marketers that even if we keep measuring the same way that we are currently measuring, there's a lot that we can do to think through this, to adjust our strategies so we can still use the framework. We can still, again, not get around privacy, but work with privacy and say, that's okay that we're not going to be able to measure every single little person. That's okay. There are ways to still predict and forecast trends and patterns. And that's all we care about. Remember, the truth is in the trend, the power is in the pattern, and that's what we're trying to find. So what I have here is I've got a little visible section. I've got a little invisible section we'll come to in a second. So the visible section is kind of what it used to be, right? The world, we had visibility into everything. We could measure everything. We could see when they saw the offer, maybe with a page view. We could see the page view of when they saw the cart. We could see the page view of when they see the thank you page and a purchase was completed. And we can tell that with Google Analytics. We can use our CRM to measure purchases. We can do all sorts of stuff, right? So all of this happens. And maybe at the bottom here, say just rough example of what a setup might be. You can start to say, well, we can predict, or maybe you have the actual results of 50 people saw your offer as a page view, 5 of them, or 10%, which is why this is down here, 10% actually started the checkout. Then maybe 2 purchased, which means 40% made it through your cart, right? Your cart through rate. So which gave you an overall conversion rate of 4%. So 2 divided by 50 is that 4%. So we can see this is what the actual results are. Now you might start using this if it comes roughly in these, if these percentages stay the same roughly week to week, which they probably will. You'll see some sort of trend or pattern. Now we can start to use that to forecast, etc. That's sort of how the idea works. And you can then forecast and say, okay, did we hit the number of page views we were supposed to hit, and did it work in the way that it was supposed to work? And that's what the conversion rate spit out. Again, we have an entire course on when forecasting revenue results. For those that want to go into that, Academy members, be sure to check that out. But the idea here is you can start answering questions like, well, how many page views do we need to do to get a sale? It's like, well, I need 25 page views currently. Let's pretend this is the trend. So 25 page views for every 1 sale. So if I wanted to get 4 sales 1 week, I go, cool, I need to get 100 page views. Based on how the funnel works, we'll spit out 4 sales, or should, right? Get close to that. So this is kind of an example of asking question and then collecting the information. And this is what it's like in today's world, well, not really today's world, but what it was like in the world over the past few years. We could collect all this information. We could build these trends and patterns out. They were reliable. It was awesome. But now, remember what's happening with privacy. So now you've got data privacy. You've got, again, ad blockers, people saying, don't measure me, right? Not accepting your cookies if you're in the GDPR world right now. And at that point, you can't measure anybody, right? So it becomes difficult. What happens is all the stuff kind of goes gray initially. Right, it goes gray where because Google Analytics, and I'll just kind of paste this over here, because Google Analytics is essentially deactivated, right? We're going to kind of put it in its own little gray section as well here. Because it is essentially deactivated, it means that we can't measure for the offer. We don't know page views. They're not being collected because the cookies aren't active, right? The scripts aren't firing, tag manager's not firing, and all that stuff. It's not active. So we can't see how many people saw the offer. We can't see how many people started the checkout. But look at, what about this? This is the CRM. So I'm going to say, CRM is your cart system, whatever it is. I'm just going to say our CRM has a cart included. So that's kind of why I think about it like this. But the CRM system, your cart system, is really what I should change this to, just to keep the confusion down. We'll call it the cart. So whatever your cart platform is, it does know when a purchase occurred. So this purchase, even though you might not be able to measure the page view through Google Analytics, you can still certainly measure the cart. You can absolutely still do that, because even though the purchase itself, right, coming through, is not being able to measure by Google Analytics, the cart system absolutely has to know about it. There is no privacy there, because they're giving you a credit card information. There's a name, there's an address, there's a phone number, like all that stuff is back there. You have to know about that. They cannot say, don't measure me, and I can't tell you when a purchase happens, right? That's impossible, because you would never be able to deliver the product. So a product or service that they purchased. So you have to have a recording at a certain point that they're not a ghost anymore. And I think a lot of people think data privacy means, oh, well, they're a ghost and I can't tell if they're in the store, which is true. But you can absolutely tell when they check out, because your system has to record that. There's no way around that, right? There's no way around that. Your system has to be able to record that. So now that we have that still, what happens with data privacy? Let's say we combine these two worlds, which is what's happening right now. This is happening as you watch this video. This is the sort of stuff that's happening. There are people who are visible and able to be measured based upon whatever law you are in your country. Maybe it's a little more open, like it is in the U.S. Or certain states, and then certain countries it's not. So you might be a little bit more private data, right? That's coming through. People that are saying, don't measure me. And this will happen where even in the U.S., if you're watching this and you're like, wow, the U.S. is fine, because it kind of is right now, again, based upon different states and everything. But there's so much that's happening in the world of privacy right now, where it will be more and more data you're not going to be able to collect, because it's going to be privacy. It's absolutely on its way. So you got to get ready and start thinking about it. And if you're using trends and patterns, which you should not be collecting data points. Data by itself, numbers by themselves are useless. They are absolutely useless. It does not matter. What you care about is trends and patterns, which is the conversion rate stuff. You have to know your trends and patterns. So let's walk through a hypothetical scenario, which is a hybrid, where basically we say, well, let's say there was 50 people that came through the behavior, and there's another 50 people, or let's say there's 100 people total that came through the behavior, and there's 50 people that came through the invisible. So this should be, right, in reality, it's 150 people. In the real world, if we could measure everybody, let's say it was 150 people. But we know that that's not actually the case. So even though it's 150 people, it's really, we're going to say there's 100 people that are measured here. There's only 50 people measured here. So all we can see is 100 of those people. So I'm going to try to do this, keep it a little easier. So we're going to pretend here, I'm going to do this on the fly. It just occurred to me, I probably should have done this in the first place. Let me zoom in here really quickly. And we're going to do some edits on the fly. So instead of 150 people, which I'm going to say is our total, and this is our real world number, right? Of what we're saying, like, okay, we know we're going to have 150 people here. If I can get this to minimize, there we go. So we're going to pull this in. Remember, the total is 150, but in reality, the way that that's made up, and this is how we have to deal with reality. We can't deal with this fake world of like hypotheticals. So in reality, what we're saying is that it's going to be 100 people. And oops, that did not work. Let's put this over. So we're going to say 100 people, and of the other 50, right? So 50 are not measurable. They're private, right? This data set is private. So this is what we're basically doing. This is just to prove the point that you can absolutely do this. So we're going to set it out like this. All right, I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can bring this trend and pattern back. So what we're saying is in the real world, it's 150 people, right? Or sorry, in this world of fake world, imaginary world, we can measure everybody. It would be 150 people. But in the real world, we can only measure 100 of them because 50 of them are saying, don't measure me. So that's kind of what this is indicative of. So 100 is the number that we can actually see. 50, we know, again, fake world, we would think they were there, but we can't measure for them. Okay, fine. Doesn't matter. We can still deal with this 100. In fact, I'm going to push this back a little bit into a different color here just so we know. Okay, 150 people. All right. Now, let's extrapolate the same sort of connections here. I'm just going to copy these over, and we're going to paste this here. We're going to change them over here. And we're going to say, okay, well, how do we deal with this world when it comes to data privacy, right? Again, how do we deal with this world in data privacy? So let's pretend the pattern here is the same, trends and patterns, because they typically are. Remember, my favorite kind of quote when I think about this is the map is not the territory. So meaning the people are still taking action on your site, even if you can't measure for them. It doesn't mean they're not there. It just means they can't be measured. So the trend should still be there. So hypothetically, I'm going to say in this case that it's 10% roughly, right? We're just using some assumptions here, but we're going to pretend the pattern is there. And that means that roughly 10 of the people are going to be measured. 5 of them cannot be measured. Okay, so we're assuming the trends and patterns are there. Remember, people are still using your site. So we know in this fake imaginary world, if we could measure everybody, be 150 people seeing the page. We know 10% of those typically go to the cart, and that's what we're going to pretend is what actually is happening. But in our systems, what we're actually seeing is 100 people see the offer, 100 people see the checkout. Okay, so 100 and 100. Now we're going to do the same thing over here, and we're going to show this. And then this is where it gets interesting, and this is where it gets powerful. So pay attention to this part, especially from a strategist perspective, because you got to make sure your measurement implementation is able to tell you the story. So what we're saying is 40%, again, I'm just using examples for this, but let's pretend that 40% of the people actually purchase. That would give us 6 sales, okay? So this is where we would say in this fake world where we know everything, we can see everything, we would actually see all 6 sales. So what would happen in the measurable world? Right? In the measurable world, which is what this dark number would be here. What would that number actually be? Would it be just, half essentially? Would I only be able to see 3 sales? The answer is no. The answer is no. I'll be able to see all 6 sales. And how many are not measurable? If you're doing this right, none of them are not measurable. They're all measurable. Why? Because I'm getting the information from the cart, not from Google Analytics. So the number of purchases is 100% visible. Okay, and the number of purchases is 100% visible to me, to my system. Because in the measurement system, the cart, you have to see a purchase. You cannot not record a purchase. It has to be there. So I know a purchase occurred. So now, this is my actual numbers. I see 100 people see the offer. I see 10 of them do the checkout. That's, 10% is what I'm seeing so far. Okay, so far so good. And then I see of those 10 people, 6 purchase. But my system was telling me before 40%. Well, guess what? 40% is no longer useful as a number. 40% is not the trend. So that becomes 60%. Okay, so instead of 40%, it's now 60% is what I measure. I adjust my trends and forecasts to account for the fact that I'm not going to be able to see everybody. So now I've got 10% that go from offer to checkout because I can measure that, and I'm measuring it consistently. Even though I don't measure all of it, it doesn't need to be. I can measure what I can measure. As long as I can measure it consistently, I can get a trend, which is important. So there's my 10% there. The 60% going to the cart now. Why? Because I can measure everybody here. And some of those people that purchased, were in this gray. I couldn't measure them. So they're not accounted for in here, but their purchase definitely is accounted for. So I push them into the system and I can measure now instead of basically say, well, 60% of the people who 60% of the people I measure roughly, 60% should end up as a purchase. That's still my trend. That is still a pattern. It will be reliable. You'll be able to use this, I promise, because I do it all the time. I've done this by weeks for years. So this exactly works. And you adjust this. So now I know 60%. And then if I look at my conversion rate, what's my conversion rate? Where it used to be 4% is what my trend was. Well, now my conversion rate, the trend will be 6%. Okay, the trend will be, in this case, 6%, because I'm saying 6 out of every 100 measurable is actually what's closing. So 6 out of every 100 measurable. And that's the beauty of this, is now you just adjust your trends. That's the secret sauce to dealing with data privacy. You don't try to rework your way around it. I'm not saying don't skip the obvious steps. Like if you have the resources and the time, effort, and energy to do server side, you certainly should. It'll be a better thing for you. And it does recover some data that has been lost, but not data that's been requested to be private. That's different. So if a user doesn't want to be tracked, you can say, cool, I don't have to measure you, right? Based upon, again, countries and laws, whatever you are. I think you should. I'm not a compliance expert, not going to be. So always pay attention to whatever that is in your own state, province, territory. So pay attention to that. But it's okay if you have to do that, because all you're going to do is you're going to adjust your pattern. So where mine was 10, 40%, and 4% conversion rate, I might start saying, well, in today's world where the privacy is starting to come through and we're not able to measure everything, I just adjust my patterns here. And I can then put this into my forecasting machinery. So now instead of forecasting, oh, okay, for every 100 page views, I'm going to get 4 sales. I go, well, I'm going to get 6 sales. So now how many page views to get a sale? So how many page views to get a sale? Well, now it's just, 6 divided by 100, I guess, right? So I need to get, that's not true. Hang on. I got to make sure I do this right. So to get, yeah, that's right. So 6 divided by 100. So that's all it's going to take to get my sales. So I basically say, well, that's 6% conversion rate. So how many to actually get the sales? Let me just do this correctly here for a second. 100 divided by 6. So roughly, I'm going to say 17 sales. 17 page views, roughly. It's like technically 16.6 or something. But that's what it is. So for every 17 page views now, I will get a purchase. And that's how it measures. So that's how I can measure it. And now if I want to make a plan, a forecast to say, well, next week I need to get 12 purchases, right? If that's my goal next week to do 12 purchases, how many measurable page views do I need to have, right? Page views that I can actually see measurable in our system. And it would be 6 times 17. That's what's going to give me the total number of actual page views, 12 times 17 to get the total number of 12 sales if I wanted to double it. So that's kind of how to think about this. And I know this can be a little esoteric. Anybody that's an Academy member, you have Ask Instructor Support, you can bring up this workshop, you can walk us through kind of what your thinking is, show us your forecast. We'll help you with this. But the idea is that you don't just go, well, poor me, I'm data privacy and that's horrible and now we can't measure anything. I guess I can't trust my numbers. That's not at all what you do. You just make sure you just get your information from the sources that is the most useful source for that information you're trying to get. And then you go through and you figure this out, right? I don't know how to block out there. Let me get rid of that. So then you go through and you adjust your trends and patterns. So that's how this works. And your trends and patterns will adjust. Remember, the map is not the territory. So your map, which is this forecast, you will adjust this. As trends change, you will adjust this. I absolutely see a world where conversion rates will be above 100% for certain steps, because you're not going to be able to measure everything, but then you will be able to measure everything on the second step. And that's okay. Again, I 100%, I have no problem, using that, because I just need a trend and pattern, while everybody else on the planet is going to get caught up on this accuracy problem. Oh, it's not accurate anymore. Accuracy was never a thing. We call it the A word here at measuremarketing.io. Don't fall for that trap. Why? Everybody else is. You don't need to fall for that. All you need is a trend and a pattern. And when you have the trends and patterns down and you realize it's going to change, you plan for that change, you listen for those changes, you'll be able to forecast still. And that's the beauty of the measurement marketing framework, is that you start to forecast and you measure against your forecast. That still tells you what step is working, what step is not. And that's all we care about as marketers. Let us get to the actionable steps. That's why measurement is important, because it measures behaviors. Now, of course, your cart system is measuring all the prices. purchases. So all your average ticket stuff is the same. Your revenue numbers are all the same. All of those are still useful, right? That's not changing. That's not going private, right? A user can't say, don't show my revenue to your company, right? That's not a thing that'll ever happen. So that stuff stays the same. So none of those numbers are going to change, but this behavioral stuff absolutely will change. You got to get ready for it. Now, a couple of things I wanted to bring up, and I'm just going to show a couple of links here. Again, you can Google for this stuff. I think it's important to be aware of it, if nothing else. So I'm going to show you 2 links. I'm also, for Academy members, you'll see it in the helpful resources section in the on-demand workshop library. It'll be there. But I wanted to show this. This is just to describe, again, we're not to go into detail of this because it changes all the time. But there are trackers that are out there that are going through all the different states. And you can see here in the U.S., and I'll start with the U.S., there's a lot of viewers there. So here's the U.S., here's all the different states that have got something going on when it comes to data privacy. So pay attention to this. You can see the bills that were coming through, the ones that worked, that didn't work, where they currently are. They'll be back again. California's is the most famous in the U.S., and whatever California does, typically the U.S. sort of follows. So I would kind of look toward, if you're looking for like what's coming down the pike and what we're going to have to deal with, probably California's would be a good one to look at. But there's other states as well. So there's that for the U.S. We also have, if you think about, well, what about my own country? Again, obviously Europe's got GDPR, it's kind of the famous one. But you'll notice here, there is something for everybody. There's Brazil, Canada, Australia, Colombia, Czech Republic, Denmark, Estonia, Finland, France, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's all sorts of stuff going on with probably a country near you, the one that you're in. So go through here and be aware of what's happening with your own country. There's so much stuff that's coming through. And so again, I would just Google for this stuff. These aren't like links. I mean, they're quick, easy links I thought were kind of useful. But Google for this stuff, be aware of it, because this is going to affect your measurement systems, right? Of how you might have to put a banner on your site one day. Now you lost half your measurable traffic. And if you lose half your traffic, you're going to freak out because you're going to think, oh my gosh, my users are going down and I can't measure all the behaviors. And I'm here to tell you, it does not matter. It doesn't matter. Your measurements can still be unbelievably useful. It's just that your patterns are going to change here. Your trends are going to change as you go through. The map changes because you can't measure everybody. So you adjust as you go through. So hopefully that makes some sense, gives you something different to think about when it comes to this whole wide world of data privacy. And you got at least one new thing for that. Just if there's one idea, it's just that you don't have to freak out in this world where, because of tech or users with ad blockers, or just the fact of laws coming through that's forcing less and less data that you can measure and it goes private. Your job is not to figure out the cat and mouse game, not to figure out, well, how do we measure somebody who doesn't want to be measured, which is the first thing everybody asks about. But that's a poor quality question because it's not a sustainable question. It's just going to end up more pain in the long run. Don't ask that question. It's not useful. The answer is, how do we deal with it? This new world, right? How do I adjust to the new rules faster than anybody else is? And this is how you do it. You focus on trends and patterns. So hopefully you got at least a couple new things from there. Now, next week, we will go through the updates workshop. Once a month, we do the updates workshop. It's on the first Wednesday of the month, which happens to be December 1st. So we're going to go through what happened in November, the changes to Google Analytics, Data Studio, and more. You'll get caught up on all of that fun stuff there. Of course, if you want to make sure you're a part of that, just subscribe to this YouTube channel. Make sure that you are notified, a little notified bell icon, and we'll look forward to sending you out that notification. Of course, you also have the option of becoming a Measurement Marketing Toolbox member. It's completely free. We have all of our traffic trackers, toolkits in there, the dashboard planners, the split test optimization pipelines back there, the Google Tag Manager cookbook. There's all sorts of stuff that are back there. All of our tools are available for free, and they are called the Toolbox membership. And you also, of course, get Workshop Wednesday. So if you want that, it's all there. Remember, the whole point of this is the framework, right? That's why we're trying to learn stuff. If you follow this framework in this pattern, it will help you as you go through. And again, measure.tips/WW to get your free Toolbox membership. Now, the other thing, of course, is the Academy. I want to make sure we mention that. We talked about that earlier on. This is our flagship training program. We built it to help you through this. That's the whole point of it. Everybody comes in from different angles. Everyone's using different tech. Everybody has a different business model, yours included. But everybody can use the same framework. So our concept is creating the Measurement Marketing Academy so you can go through and learn this framework. I'm going to pull this up so you can see kind of what it looks like here. The Academy itself, you have 6 blocks. So when you come in, you see the courses. We have on-demand workshops, the toolbox, that's the content. For support, you've got your Winner Circle community. This is the members helping members. And you also have instructors, concierge level support here with the instructors actually to help you out. So what this actually looks like. If you go into the courses, you'll see they're organized by date, just so you can get caught up on the latest and greatest. We just updated the Win Google Analytics Basics course, so you can see, actually that's coming through in November. It's updating next week, so I'm a little jumping the gun there, but this is being updated next week. Tag Manager was just updated. The retargeting setup was just updated. Win Marketing Framework was a new one before that. This is always the first one to watch, by the way, when you're a new Academy member, so be sure to check this one out. You also have them organized by group. So if you want to come in and just learn about Google Analytics 4, there's the Google Analytics 4 course, just updated in early August. So we have Tag Manager. There's that server-side course I was talking about with Tag Manager that was also done earlier in the summer of 2021. So you see all of these that are back here, dashboards and reporting, and of course, measurement strategy. This is the secret sauce. The challenge to measurement is not learning how to use the tool. It's learning the why to use the tool, and the how to use the tool. Not the specific tactics of the tool, but the how strategies of the tool. And this is what these strategy workshops will help you through. So just a few things on the Win courses themselves. So that's this section right here, just standard courses like you'd imagine. Then you've got the on-demand workshops, and on-demand workshops a little different. Kind of, you can see what we do here with like the Odds in the Journey workshop was the most recent one coming through, and you got what's new all organized. So you can get caught up on what the latest and greatest stuff is, or the getting started topics for beginner topics if you wanted to go through those and see kind of, what the different beginner topics were. These are something where it's not big enough for a course, but we thought it was useful and quick bites, right? Less than 20-minute videos, something along those lines. So that's the on-demand workshops, and that's an entire searchable database. So you can go through here, search for whatever the thing is you're looking for. It searches for other courses and the workshops, and then spits out videos for you. So 24/7, you have access to all of that. That's there. The other source of content is the toolbox itself. The toolbox, all of resources. Again, for toolbox members, this part's free. For Academy members, though, we have the Get It Done guide section that is unlocked. And you can see things like the iframe measurement, Get It Done guide, the Eyes on the Journey for building the Eyes on Journey report. Kind of something we're becoming more and more famous for by the day. So check that out because that's incredibly useful. We just recently used that for our own dashboard bootcamp. It was amazing. Love it, love it, love it. We definitely eat our own dog food here. So there's the courses, the workshops, the toolbox. Then you've got the support. We talked about Winner Circle and the Instructor Support. Winner Circle is members helping members. So you can see here is like the Data Studio dashboards and reporting group, people helping each other out, asking about questions about different stuff. And then you've got the Ask an Instructor Support. The way this works is if you have a question that you don't really want public for whatever reason, maybe it's a client or something like that, and you just need some help maybe on a tactic, like how do I get Tag Manager's privacy consent features set up or something like that you're trying to do for some consent management system that you've got in place. Ask a question. You pop in the question there, pop in the description, send that over to the instructors. Ideally, send over videos and screenshots. We love that stuff. And then the instructors will send back screenshots and videos back to you that says, oh, hey, check this box, or here's how you can think about it. And it's perfect for tactical questions for like, how do I get this goal to work, or why is this trigger not firing? But it's also perfect for strategy questions because we deal with this stuff all the time. We measure stuff and we deal with more platforms than you probably ever will. We deal with more tech than you ever will. We've been asked more questions about measurement than you ever will come up with. So send us those questions, even if a strategy question or a fresh pair of eyes style question, a thinking question. We can give it to the instructors, get their take on something. They'll help you out to the best of their abilities, so you can walk through it. So very, very cool things that are back here in the Measurement Marketing Academy. It is a just-in-time learning platform. Do not try to get through every course, every workshop. Don't even ask those questions because we create content faster than you can ever watch it. So keep that in mind. It is just-in-time learning platform so that when you need the thing will be there for you. That's the idea. So you get access to all the courses, including all the updates, any new courses. You get access to every single Ask Instructor Support option that's back there. It's unlimited questions you can ask. There's no limit on any of that. You get access to every single on-demand workshop that's back there, and there's more each week practically, including this one that's about to go back there. The Winner Circle community, you of course get access to that. Over $8,500 in training and support each and every month that you are an Academy member that you have access to. So take a moment to join the Measurement Marketing Academy today. To find out what the most current offer is, just go to measure.tips/getacademy. And I look forward to seeing you in the Measurement Marketing Academy soon. With that, we'll go ahead and bring this one to a close. This has been Strategy Session, building a measurement strategy around data privacy. Thanks again for watching this workshop, and we'll see you on the next one. Take care.